All right, good morning. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. Today is August 4th, 2020, and I've got 9:30 on the clock here. Let's begin this morning with our invocation. I'd like to call Pastor Mike Jones from New Hope Presbyterian Church up to the podium. Pastor, if you're here. It appears maybe our pastor did not make it this morning. Commissioner Sandelli, would you be so kind as to offer an invocation for us?
Bless you. No. Good morning, everybody. Let's bow our heads and be thankful. Dear God, thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for the gift of waking up every morning within our community that we care so much about. Please protect those in most need. Let's be thankful for the day. Let's look forward to a brighter tomorrow. And we do this all in your name. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Sandelli. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, let the record show we are all socially distanced at our desks, and Commissioner Manning was unable to make it to today's meeting. Do we need to pause for a moment? I'm going to take a quick pause so that the minutes can get set up. All right. Everything's okay. And we'll resume now. Okay, so we are at we have no ceremonial presentations on our meeting agenda this morning. So we're at the portion of the agenda where we talk about any additions, deletions, or revisions and corrections to the agenda. On our agenda recap, under revisions and corrections, items C4, C5, A6, and A8 have revisions that have been suggested by our attorney and manager and staff. Commissioners, do I have a motion to accept those revisions and corrections? Motion from Commissioner Mann. Second is from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any discussion on that? Any public comment? Anybody wish to speak on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right, so that takes care of the items on our recap. Moving on to our consent agenda. That's items 1 through 26 on the agenda. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the consent agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll go ahead and close public comment on that. Commissioner Mann, do you have any items you'd like to pull for discussion?
I do not.
I have none that I'd like to pull for discussion. Commissioner Pendergrass?
None.
Commissioner Sandelli? None? Okay, very good. Do I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda?
Move the balance.
Motion from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Mann. Any further discussion on that? No? Any objections? No objections, then that motion carries unanimously. All right, we're moving to our administrative agenda. This is, there are 8 items on the administrative agenda today. 3 of the items on our administrative agenda are related. That would be items 1, 3, and 7. So at this time, I'd like to ask our county manager and his team to introduce items 1, 3, and 7. All of those are related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Salyer, will you please come to the podium and introduce administrative number 1?
Good morning, Commissioners. Glenn Salyer, County Manager's Office. We have 4 new proposals for you this morning related to the LeeCares program. So what I'll do is just provide a brief update as to where we stand on each category and then make the proposal and take questions on each one individually. So with our Individuals and Families Assistance Program, you can see that we've approved $11 million of rent, mortgage, and utility assistance to date. We are proposing to move to round 2 of this program. What that would mean is a couple of things. One, we would dramatically expand eligibility up to 120% of area median income, and you can see on the table there what that means in terms of annual income and household size. Secondly, we would offer an increase in the maximum assistance amount from $2,000 to $3,000. If someone received assistance in round 1, they would still be eligible to apply again for round 2. I do want to emphasize that you can only apply once per round. So if, for instance, you apply in round 2 and you use $2,000 of assistance, that you can't come back for an additional bite at the apple. But again, if you've already received money, it doesn't matter. You could apply again under round 2. Any questions about this one?
Please.
Go ahead, Commissioner Mann.
What is the trigger mechanism? Why are we going more than we had originally? Did Washington do something that's allowed us to do this, or why didn't we start out at this level?
When we get to the next administrative item, Commissioner, which is some money that we're receiving from the state under the CARES Act for housing stabilization, you will see that they are allowing up to 120% of area median income. And so we thought we would mirror that with our program. So we're using that as precedent to say that, this is acceptable for these federal
Are
funds.
we receiving additional dollars? Is that what you're saying, through the state, which will cover this difference?
Not exactly. It's a separate program. I'm just suggesting that their eligibility requirements provide precedent for us to use the same eligibility requirements for this program.
And there's certainly more than enough dollars in the grant that we received to cover this and then some.
Yes, sir. We still have, we had allotted $45 million in total for human services programs. Now that encompasses more than just this program, but we still have roughly $30 million in that allocation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very good. And that was actually one of my questions as well, so thank you, Glenn. And this is item number 3 you're covering right now on the administrative agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Okay, moving on to the business assistance program. Here we're simply proposing an update to the rehire program that you authorized earlier this summer. We're suggesting that we increase the award amounts to up the incentive to rehire people, if you will. And what we're saying is we could increase the grant amount according to the wage that the employer is paying. And you can see what we're suggesting in the table there. In addition, we're suggesting that each individual business could receive a greater number of grants, up to 2 grants if you have 5 employees or less, up to 4 grants if you have between 6 and 10 employees. And then over 10 employees, it really would be a case-by-case call through the Economic Development Office, understanding what the wherewithal of that business is, how much money is remaining in the fund, those kinds of considerations. Any questions about this one?
Whoops. Questions, Commissioners, on that one? No? Okay.
Very good. So for PPE, you can see that we have distributed over 4 million items to date. That's everything from surgical masks, KN95s, gloves, hand sanitizer, gowns, many different things that are needed by the different constituencies you see on the slide. We're asking now that you authorize an additional $2.3 million so that we can make a general public distribution. For Lee County's part, we are thinking along the lines of distributing through food pantries at some of our county facilities, like perhaps libraries, parks and rec facilities, and then maybe some pop-up distributions with not-for-profit partners in the community. And what we'd like to do here is collaborate with our municipalities so that they can handle distribution within their own jurisdiction, and then we would reimburse them for that.
Questions, Commissioners, on that? One question. So what items are you looking to distribute directly to the public?
Really, we would keep it simple, Commissioner Hammond. It would be masks and hand sanitizer, probably a combination of reusable masks, maybe some surgical masks, and just typical hand sanitizer.
And in the distributions we've been making to businesses, the 4.2 million items distributed, are those masks as well?
That was masks, hand sanitizer, and gloves.
Okay, very good. So we pushed a ton of this personal protective equipment out into the community.
We still have some more distribution to go on the business side. We're working out the logistics of that now.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, it's important to know that we continue to purchase PPE, and we are stockpiling it so that we will have on hand a 1-year supply of PPE should we experience another pandemic.
And that would be for our emergency medical services team to use?
It would be for the team to use. It would be for the community. It would be for the cities. It would be for all of the first responder agencies.
Excellent. Are we able to also contribute it to doctors who would need it or nurses as well?
Glenn?
We have done that in some cases, Commissioners, primarily to dentists, optometrists, people like that.
Excellent. Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Commissioner Mann.
I need to understand a little better the distribution process to the public. Masks, for instance, you mentioned are available, but how does that happen? Where do they go? Who asks? Who calls what phone number?
Well, again, we're still working out the logistics, Commissioner, but what we envision is a pretty simple process whereby we would announce, for instance, we're distributing at Lehigh Regional Park on this day between these times, and you simply show up, demonstrate that you're a Lee County resident, and you would
Like
get...
we're announcing the testing at ballpark, or...
That's right.
So we haven't done this yet.
We haven't done the general public distribution yet. It's been businesses, assisted living and nursing facilities, and our municipal partners and our constitutional officers.
Okay. Well, this is good. I'm glad we're moving to this step, because I'm sure there's folks out there that still having to figure out how you get hold of a mask, and it's a good giant leap forward. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. And then for the last program on child care assistance, we are asking you to double the amount that each child can qualify for a scholarship, from $1,250 to $2,500. And the reason for that is it would allow us to extend the program through the end of calendar year 2020 so that families can enroll their children in after-school care and specialty camps. United Way is on board. We would continue administering the process as we have been. Any questions about this one?
Same question I had before. Why are we allowed to do this? Are you suggesting we increase this now? Why didn't we begin that? Or is this following some state model? Or
No, sir. This is just in.
Why didn't we do this earlier?
This is just in response to a continuing need that we see. Now that schools are talking about going back into physical session, there may be a need for after-school care in particular, so it's just an extension.
So we're learning as we go along that there's a larger demand than what we contemplated to begin with? Would
Mr.
be
Chair?
We simply didn't
way of
know, yes.
describing this?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, there's also a changing demand as well over time. When we first started this program for child care, we had a pretty fair idea how much money was going to be required. And part of the program as well is the summer camps through Parks and Recreation, which were scheduled to finish end of July initially.
Well, initially.
Thereabouts?
Last Friday.
Yeah, last Friday. So we're extending the summer camps through August 31st, which is now the new start date for the school system. So we're learning, but there's also a changing demand, and we want to be able to adjust as we move through it, Commissioner.
Is that good, Commissioner?
I'm okay with that, because from day one we've been talking about we don't have a guidebook here. We're learning a lot of this as we go along, and demand is one of the things that we didn't have any way of measuring to begin with, so I'm not surprised about this. In fact, I'm pleased about it, because we have far more money in the federal grant than we're ever going to spend. I don't think it's possible for us to go through all those hundreds of millions that we have sitting in the bank right now. So I'm pleased that we're getting a better feel for what the demand and the requirements are out there. And I appreciate y'all's continual review of this and your intermittent adjustments.
Sure, and we will, depending on what Congress does, there may be an additional adjustment. It's just hard to say at the moment. The $600 per week for those unemployed expired at the end of July, and Congress is still dickering over a new plan, and so we'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. But that, depending on what happens, we may have to adjust again.
Excellent. Commissioner Sandelli, you're recognized.
Just a quick comment. I think I go all the way back to when we started this down this path, and I think that, the first thing was what was the demand going to be, and that was we really didn't know. And so we tried to address the demand, and we also put some money into reserves in case we had a second wave. So we had a comfort level that not knowing what the extension was going to be. And I think the last thing is what Roger just said, and that's that money coming out of D.C., whether we need it or not, is a battle right now. And so you can't count on that until you see it. So I think we positioned ourselves well, addressing the initial need, continue to assess the need, have some reserves. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Excellent. Any further questions, Commissioners, before we continue? All right, Glenn.
Okay, thank you. So just to tell you what the next steps are, Human Resources is currently in the process of hiring some temporary staff to supplement what we have now for the LeeCares program. You'll recall that we mobilized almost 150 county employees. Well, our departments need some of those people back. It's been a long haul, of course, and so we intend to train 55 new LeeCares staff over the coming couple of weeks. And then, of course, we still need to procure additional PPE, coordinate with the municipalities for the distribution. And finally, just on timing, so you have a sense of what we're proposing, round 2 of the individual and families assistance would start August 17, and that means that the current round would close this Friday at 5 p.m. That would give us 1 week to tool up for the next round. In terms of business rehire, if you approve the proposal, that will be implemented immediately. Obviously, the PPE is still to be determined, like we talked about, and then child care, very seamless. United Way will continue to administer that for us. And that's it for this item, Commissioners.
Very good. So that concludes item 3's explanation?
That is item 3, yes, sir.
Very good. And then you wanted to talk about how they all work together. And so, Mr. County Attorney, let me ask you a question. We can actually introduce items 3, 1, and 7 all together, give a presentation on all of them to show how they work together, and then I could take public comment on all 3 items in one shot?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. All right, well, then let's do it that way.
Yes, sir. I will move to administrative item number 1, and this is to accept some money from the state. We'd be a subrecipient of coronavirus relief funds used for housing stabilization, primarily rent and mortgage assistance, and the state has specified that we will use our SHIP process, of which you're all familiar. So what we would intend to do with this tranche of funds is prioritize very low-income households. That means they would be at 50% or less of area median income. The reason for that is the award, each individual award under this program could go as high as $10,000. So we're trying to prioritize those who most need that kind of help. Secondly, there is an additional wave of money coming under this program sometime around October 15th. The formula that will be used to determine how much money that is in part determined by how well we deploy these monies. So if we can get these on the street to the most needy very quickly, we will qualify for additional funds come October. So that's how the two would work together. Any questions about that?
Any questions, Commissioners, on this item? No?
Okay. Then for item number 7, Mark Mora will introduce that one.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Mora, County Manager's Office. Hope you are having a great day. I'm here to present administrative agenda item number 7 from our Human Services Department. This item seeks your approval to submit the annual HUD action plan as well as accept an emergency solutions grant from HUD in the amount of $1.8 million. Now, this is an ESG grant. It is a Round 2 CARES Act allocation. So we previously received an allocation from HUD for ESG back earlier in the spring. These funds are earmarked for the Rapid Rehousing Program, which is administered by the Human and Veteran Services Department, as well as some nonprofit rapid rehousing providers. These funds the deadline for expenditure of these funds is September 30th, 2022. And as you know, the Rapid Rehousing Program helps those in housing emergency, helps them with security deposits and rent up until a year. The intended targets in this particular program are those in our community facing a housing emergency due to COVID-19. Upon approval of this item, a notice of funding availability will be issued later this week in order to contract with additional nonprofit rapid rehousing providers. During our outreach services with homeless community, we have a growing number of folks seeking some rapid rehousing. So seeing those numbers grow, and this program is going to address some of those concerns. We are currently in the process of bringing 3 additional partners on board: St. Vincent de Paul, Goodwill Industries, and the Jewish Family and Children's Service. So we're expanding our capacities in order to provide these types of services. So it's twofold. Funding these programs is not just increasing the program capacity, but it's also decreasing the time taken for us to move homeless into stable housing.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Mora?
No, just want to thank Mark for all the work he's done on this particular issue.
Oh, here, absolutely. Any questions, Commissioner Mann? No? Mr. Mora, one question I did have. So this program is going to be important, I believe, as we start to see the moratoriums on foreclosures and evictions come into play, correct?
Oh, absolutely. These are going to be key. And the fact that the funds are good until September 30th, 2022 gives us some sustainability and help in the community as well.
In theory, how it should work is if a family gets, evicted from their home, they could come to us and take advantage of the rapid rehousing and get back into a home quickly without having to spend any time homeless?
Absolutely. That is the goal, is that they're homeless very briefly, if they are at all. Connect them with landlords that are pre-approved. We've already inspected the homes that they're using and provide them that security deposit so we can get them housed as quickly as possible.
Very good. And this money is slated to last. Does it have any timeline when it ends, or is it?
Well, the monies here that are earmarked for anybody that's suffering housing emergencies during the COVID-19, this is expiring in September 30th, 2022. So there's some longevity in this program.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any further questions? Commissioner Pendergrass.
I just want to thank staff for working on this. They've been working on this since March. A lot of these programs have been in place since March. So thank you to all the staff working with the Treasury Department to bring this forward for our community. Good job.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. County Manager, before we consider the items, anything to just wrap it up? It sounds like basically what I'm hearing from you guys is if your income or your family income has been impacted by COVID-19 through no fault of your own, please reach out to the LeeCares program because we can get you connected with resources that'll help make you whole. Is that?
Yes, sir. That's. I think that's a pretty good summary. In addition to that, we've been working on a fairly robust communications program as well. To get the word out. I think some of you may have seen, I think, our first bus, the LeeTran bus with the shrink wrap, showing the LeeCares program and how to contact us is on the street. And we have at least 1 or 2 more, I think, that'll be coming out of the shop here shortly. We have partnered with Lee Health on a communications program as well. So we're going to continue to communicate with the community, encouraging them to take advantage of these programs. We've never seen anything quite like this, with this much money coming from Washington, from the federal government, to be spent the way it's being spent. So we just want to continue to encourage people to take advantage.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So this is items, administrative agenda items 1, 3, and 7. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on these items? Come on forward, and when you get up to the podium, would you state your name for the record? And anybody else, raise your hand if you'd like to speak on these 3 items. Okay, so we have 1 speaker. Morning.
Valdemar Garay, homeless. It's good to see you, commissioners, today, early in the morning. Thank you. I appreciate your hard work and effort on the homeless community and the Latino community in the area. It's an honor and privilege to take this opportunity to speak before you. Good morning, audience. Good morning, people who are watching us online or TV. I just want to let you know to everybody that this is a privileged area. It's a land that the Lord has given us where we can have access to services that no other county or any other city in the United States, probably around the world, like being in Fort Myers. Lake County, it's a special place to live in. And as always, I got a big mouth and I had to speak loud. It's about housing. So it's been a week since the Holy Spirit. I am a missionary, and I believe in the Word of God, and I believe in the Holy Spirit. It's been prompting to speak about the housing situation. Since I've been homeless for probably 1 year and a half, I had an opportunity to live in places like Fort Myers Rescue Mission. Probably I know about Salvation Army. I know about St. Matthew and Naples. But since we have been affected for the COVID-19, the new parameters and the new standards that we need to face about the distancing between people in the shelters is being taken a priority. So those places, any kind of shelter, any convalescent center, has been affected for this situation. So remember, the shelters are going to be more limited in space of number of residents. So we need to really emphasize, commissioners, in the housing. We need to respect the boundaries because the medical field is there, the virus is real, the consequences are real, and we need to face it. It's an enemy that we don't see, but we see the consequences. Until today, I get a chance and opportunity to deal with the homeless community, with the directors from CCMI, from San Martin de Porres, they are Catholics, Salvation Army principals, and all these amazing people that they have laid down their lives for us. So I had 20 seconds left. My prayers are for you guys that will find a place and for families, not just for the homeless, for families, especially the Latino community that are in transition to get their residence or their work permission and the citizenship. They need also your attention. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you for your time this morning. Very good. All right, any further comments? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time then. Commissioners, we have heard presentation on items 1, 3, and 7 on the administrative agenda. We've taken public comment. Does anybody wish to make a motion for approval?
Move the items.
Okay, Commissioner Pendergrass moves approval and Commissioner Sandelli seconds it. Do we have any further discussion on these items? Okay, seeing no further discussion, are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. DeGillet, will you introduce administrative agenda item number 2?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask Pete Winton, our CFO, to come to the podium. He's going to discuss with you adopting proposed preliminary millage rates for the for fiscal year 2021.
Good morning, Commissioners. With this item, you are setting the maximum property tax rates for fiscal year 2021. For the 4 main property tax rates, we're recommending keeping them the same. So after this date, you can't increase the rates, you can always decrease them. And then the remaining are MSTUs that are existing MSTUs for street lighting, landscaping, dredging, road paving, and maintenance, and those have been set in order to operate those MSTUs for the coming year.
Excellent. Commissioners, any questions for Pete? No? Commissioner Mann.
Yeah, how have you taken into consideration, maybe you've touched on this before, but remind me, we're going to be anticipating this year that property values are probably going to continue to slide downward. Yes? And what does this trim notice anticipate a year from now? We look like we're going to be staring at all else being equal, a recommended ad valorem tax increase a year from now. What can we say with the trends that we're looking at today, based on the tragedy of the virus? Where are we going to be a year from now, to the extent you can see that far?
Go ahead, Pete.
Commissioners, there's not an indication that we have right now that the tax base is taking a big hit right now. It's been fairly healthy through these first few months. Can't predict what will happen over the next 12 months. But yeah, at this point, we don't anticipate that. You'll see that later in the budget workshop, that we are planning for contingencies in case revenues continue to decrease for fiscal year 21-22.
Commissioners, what you'll see this afternoon during the budget workshop is based on the property values that will produce the revenue for the upcoming year. there are sufficient dollars that we want to ask you to approve placing in a revenue stabilization fund that would help make up for loss of revenue should it occur next year based on the potential for reduction in property values. The other revenues that we'll talk about this afternoon are really enterprise funds and state revenue sharing in particular, where we may see the at least a temporary decline in the value, but so far all things being equal, next year I'm not really anticipating a huge problem.
As far as I limited my question to ad valorem, and I am aware that we have had a surprisingly strong continuation of housing starts. The permits are still flying off the shelves in our office over there. But we cannot really guess as to how long that is going to continue. But I did not include other revenue sources that are already affected, and we have seen that. And I'll tell you what, I'll be happy to just drop my question for now, but because we're going to pursue this in the workshop this afternoon with a little more clarity.
Yes, so, yeah, but to answer the very simple question, would we anticipate a millage rate increase next year? No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann. Commissioner Pendergrass.
Pete, with our reserves and everything, I think Roger just summed it up just then. We would not look at that because they're reserves. But we've seen on a national and also on a Florida base, the property appraisers, that there will probably be an increase again next year. If you look at the real estate market, it's still booming. Like Commissioner Mann said, the new construction is still going on. What I've seen in the local market is that people are still buying homes and people still doing business. No matter what the gloom and doom news is trying to portray, life is still going on. So the real facts are business is still going on, homes are still being sold, so we're not going to see a loss of value. Is it what you're seeing based on appraisals?
At this point, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sandelli.
Just echo that. I've talked to probably 3 or 4 different residential real estate brokers over the last few weeks. All the indications are the market is very strong right now. They're very pleased with that. So I think we've got the basis of a strong economy. We've got some challenges ahead, but all the indications. The second thing is interest rates are at an all-time low, which allows people, to buy a home and get in. So they're making that decision. My son just made his first decision out in Colorado. 2.8% was pretty attractive. So it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandelli. Okay, very good. Let me ask at this time, if there are no further questions, Commissioners, then I'll go ahead and take public comment. Okay. Anybody wish to speak in public comment on item number 2, which is our truth and millage notice, our trim notice, setting the maximum tax rate for next year? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Does anybody wish to make a motion?
I move the item.
Okay, Commissioner Pendergrass moves approval. Commissioner Sandelli makes a second. Do we have any further discussion on this item? Okay. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, folks. Reminder, we've already voted on item 3, and so we'll move to item 4. Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like Mr. Talmadge to come to the podium and discuss with you adopting a resolution that will approve the issuance of IDA revenue bonds on behalf of the Cypress Cove at Health Park. John.
Good morning, John Talmadge for the record. This is a resolution requesting you to allow the IDA, the Industrial Development Authority, to issue $112 million bonds to refund previous financial commitments they have obligated themselves to, as well as some expansions. As is the case with all IDA bonds, there's no financial liability to the county or to the IDA.
Very good. Questions? Any questions, Commissioners? No? All right. Very good. Does anybody, thank you, Mr. Talmadge, anybody wish to speak in public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Commissioners, does anyone wish to make a motion?
Make a motion.
All right. Commissioner Sandelli moves approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. All right. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 5, Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 5 is 2020 land purchase. I'd like to have Mr. Lavender come to the podium and present the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item number 5 of the environmental items is asking the board to approve a purchase of 15 acres that's contiguous to the Pine Island Flatwoods Preserve. This parcel, ranked 42 on the criteria and ranking by staff. Class Act unanimously approved bringing it before the board. It consists of pine flatwoods and mangrove forest, as we all know, home of gopher tortoise and herons.
Excellent. Question? Yeah, Commissioner Mann. We do have a motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have a second? You want a second?
I'll second it, but I want to, this ranked 42nd, is that what you said?
42 out of 100.
Make me understand the ranking system. Is that 42? Is that good? Or
real quickly for the record, the motion for approval was from Commissioner Pendergrass, second from Commissioner Mann, and go ahead with your question. Yes, sir.
Yes, 42 is a good score. Various departments rank each parcel, including natural resources, parks and recreation.
Well, make me understand the system. What's the highest you could get?
100.
100? Mm-hmm. And a typical score for lands that we've been purchasing would be in this range, or 60, or?
Yes, sir. It would be in this range, anywhere from 30 to 70.
Hard to get a perfect score.
That's correct.
Have we ever had one?
Yes. No, not that I'm aware of.
What other questions do we have, Commissioners?
No, the first thing that catches my eye is when it's contiguous, when we continue to add, and from a lot of different venues. So it was nice to see that.
Very good. Yeah, what is, Mr. Lavender, what's the value for you all in purchasing contiguous property? How does that help you?
It helps us grow our preserves. It helps us reach the 40,000 mark, as far as acreage in the conservation program.
Makes the management a lot easier too, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Well, at this point, then, thank you very much, Mr. Lavender. I'm going to ask for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the Conservation 2020 purchase? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. We already have a motion from Commissioner Pendergrass and the seconds from Commissioner Mann. Do we have any further discussion from the commissioners?
Good.
No? All right. I'm just happy to see that during this time we still haven't forgotten about, our goals of preserving land and taking care of the environment. I'll call the question. Are there any objections? All right. Seeing no objections, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 6, Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another 2020 purchase. Jesse?
Yes. Environmental item number 6 is asking the board to purchase 201 acres that's contiguous to the Imperial Marsh Preserve. This is a long, skinny tract of land that provides a perfect wildlife corridor through this area of the county. There's numerous bird species found there, as well as wetland areas located on this parcel. And it's another contiguous acquisition that benefits the conservation program.
Very good. What questions do we have, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and ask for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Commissioners, any discussion, or does anyone wish to make the motion?
Move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass, and the second is from Commissioner Sandelli. Any further discussion? All right. I can't help it. I love this. I love that we're able to add 200 acres to an existing Conservation 2020 preserve. And if you think about the area where this is, guys, this is south of State Road 82. That's a road that's going to be widened by the state. You know, obviously we talk about when roads are widened, sometimes that could bring new growth and new development to the area. One of the ways we're balancing the economic prosperity that we're seeing here in Lee County and the economic growth that we're seeing with the environment is we're continuing to look for great opportunities to preserve land in those areas. And this is one of the ways we're continuing that and keeping the 2020 program alive. So with that, I'll go ahead and call the question. Does anybody object to the motion? Okay, seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And we have voted on item number 7 already, so we'll move to item number 8 on our administrative agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like Mr. Cody to come to the podium, please, present transit item number 8.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Admin. It's a pleasure to stand before you with regards to approve our additional agreement for Lee transfer collection. This will improve the rider experience to have a contactless fare solution that allows individuals to preload their cards via their computers, their handheld cell phones, their iPads, anything that they have electronically. It also allows for our riders to board our bus, to transfer from one bus to another in a seamless way that's contactless. We have our new implementation of our Tropa cards, which allows for that individual to tap to load, to tap to transfer. Additionally, with the Tropa card, we have the mobile link, which has our ACH component. That's the credit card component. The credit card component will be capped with an app called LeeCares. So it's the LeeCares solution that allows individuals to load and preload those cards and reload those cards via our online services. This process will take about a 90-day period for it to get up and running, so we anticipate November being the initiation or inauguration date of our new Tropa card system.
Excellent. Any questions, commissioners? No? Seeing no questions, Mr. Cody, thank you for the great explanation. I'll call for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the LeeTran item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Anybody wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any discussion on this item? No? I love the item. I think it's great that we can continue to make a better customer experience for the folks who use LeeTran.
Mr. Chair, also, if I may, Mr. Cody gave a really good explanation of this new product that we're rolling out. But I got to tell you, he and his staff, along with Mark Mora, have done just a tremendous job in putting all of this together during a particularly difficult time. And I tell you, we now our transit system, we begin to enter the world of the much larger systems with a lot more money than we have to create this kind of customer experience that's not only convenient, but it's also much healthier because the drivers and the passengers do not have to exchange money. Everyone's protected. So we're really proud of this one.
Takes care of that whole exact change argument,
Yes,
which I've even been stuck in before. Very good. Well, at this time, I'll go ahead and call the question then. Are there any objections to the motion? All right, seeing none, then that motion carries unanimously. Thanks again for the good work. Let's move to our 9:30 a.m. public hearing agenda, and I'd like to ask the County Attorney's Office to introduce item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is a petition to vacate a utility easement that lies between two existing lots at the address of 2401 Fisher Court, Lehigh Acres. All required reviews by county staff have taken place. There is no objection. Following your public hearing, we would recommend approval. Commissioners, I would also point out that I have previously furnished notice of each of your public hearings this morning to your clerk. They are each individually adequate so that we are authorized to proceed.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. County Attorney. Commissioners, do we have any questions before I call for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and call. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on our first public hearing today?
I'll move it.
Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. We have a motion for approval from the District Commissioner, Commissioner Mann. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 2 is a petition to vacate at 12209 Matlacha Boulevard, Cape Coral. Commissioners, this is canal right-of-way that lies adjacent to Lot 12. Once again, all reviewing agencies have provided comment. There are no objections, and we recommend approval.
Any questions before I call for public comment? Okay, seeing none, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the Matlacha item number 2 on our public hearings? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Do we have a motion for approval? Motion for approval from Commissioner Sandelli. Do I have a second from Commissioner Pendergrass? Do we have any discussion on that? Any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Item 3, Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 3 is to conduct a final hearing approving the final assessment for the Marina Coral Circle Dredge, Msbu. Commissioners, this project was previously approved by you dating back to April 2017. The final cost of the project was $387,632. This resulted in a net cost per parcel of $15,505.27. This may be paid in 30 days or financed over a period of 15 years, and we would respectfully request approval.
Excellent. Any questions before we turn to public comment? Seeing none. All right, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the Marina Coral Circle item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Anybody wish to make a motion? Motion for approval from Commissioner Mann. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Any discussion on this item? No? Any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections, that motion carries unanimously. Item 4 on our public hearing agenda, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 4 is to conduct a public hearing to approve the final assessment for the Sunset Cove Channel Dredge Msbu. Commissioners, the final cost was $450,898. This resulted in a cost per lot of $5,913.41. Commissioners, I would point out that this was a difference of approximately 11% over the estimated cost. However, this cost overrun was due to an increase in the amount of materials that had to be removed. The balance of that cost will be made up by the county as a participating party. Once again, payment may be made in 30 days or financed over a 10-year period, and we would respectfully request approval.
Excellent. Do we have any questions before we go to public comment? Seeing none, I'll call for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak on the Sunset Cove Channel Dredge MSBU item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Does anybody wish to make a motion?
Move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass, second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on this item? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, and item number 5, Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 5 is a request following your public hearing to adopt and certify a resolution placing various MSBU assessments on the tax bill for this upcoming year. Commissioners, those MSBUs are contained in your backup material, and without objection, I would just reference that without the necessity to read each into the record at this point. These are existing MSBUs. This hearing is required by Section 197.3632 Florida statutes, and following your public hearing, we would respectfully request approval.
Very good. Any questions before I call for public comment? All right, seeing none. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the MSBU assessments being placed on the tax bills? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Does anybody wish to make a motion?
Move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass. The second is from Commissioner Mann. Any further discussion on this? I will just say, while the county attorney declined to read them, come to the September budget hearing. It is the most exciting portion of the night when we read every millage rate, one after another. It's really gets going. All right, seeing no further discussion, are there any objections to the motion? Okay, I see none, so that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. County Attorney, and that concludes our public hearing agenda for the morning. Do we have any walk-ons or carryovers, Mr. Desjardins?
No, sir.
All right. Let's move to commissioner items. Let's start with Commissioner Sandelli. Do you have any items today? No, sir. All right. Commissioner Pendergrass?
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody and all our staff the last month for working so hard for everybody in the community. I'd also like to commend our chairman for being so engaged and so involved. Commissioner Hammond, you've done a tremendous job the last few months through this whole crisis, and thank you for everything you've done. You did a great job on the radio show this morning, and every day you just amaze me what you do for the county. The information you're getting out to the public, and thank you to our staff for getting the information out. It's hard to disseminate all the information to what we're doing with LeeCares and all our great staff, and also like to thank Tamara Pygett and all her staff with LeeCares that's going through this process with us. But again, thank you, Commissioner Hammond, for your great job and all the information you provided to the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Pendergrass. And I just want to say this has been a great effort working with all of you this year through this. We are certainly one of the best teams in Lee County local government. And when the situation called for it, we all rose to the occasion along with our just incredible staff who has done things that, man, just continue to impress us every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's our community, and our community stepped up the last few months and made a difference. Our community, the business owners, have made a difference, and that's why we're seeing the numbers decline within our community. Dr. Anthony Newdy said it best 3 weeks ago. He said, we don't need more government intervention. We need the public to do the right thing. And the public has done the right thing. And so thank you for everything, for your leadership.
Thanks, Commissioner Pendergrass. For my commissioner item, commissioners, I'm going to need for us to convene as the Board of Port Commissioners. So I'd like to make that announcement now that we are convened as the Lee County Port Authority Commissioners. This is, Commissioners, a pretty routine item. Ben Siegel, who is our acting executive director, was actually due a merit increase under his position as a deputy executive director. It's an increase that would have been signed off by the acting executive director, but he is not allowed to sign off on his own increase, so it falls to us as his now supervisors to sign off on this. This is follows all the procedures as outlined by our attorney, Greg Hagan, and so I did not see anything in record where I had the authority to unilaterally just sign off on it, so I wanted to bring it to you guys to see, is there any objection on me signing off on his evaluation and merit increase that he was due for being a deputy executive director?
No, I think Ben has done a great job in some very challenging times, and if this meets all the requirements, then he's done well.
Excellent. Any further comments or?
My only question was, so this was due in January, I believe?
That's correct. Yeah, this was something that was due back in January that we had.
So my question, I guess, is how did that get missed? I mean, how did we keep that from happening in the future, just to make sure our employees are held, hold in the future, so this doesn't happen again? And I know we had changed because, basically he took the job over in November and December, so it was kind of like that transition all occurred at the same time within a few months. So,
I'll go ahead and take that one on my shoulders. He had brought it up in January, to tell you the truth, and at that time I told him, let's just see how the executive director position shakes out, and so we've seen how that's gone, and I believe he's been.
But no, I'm just trying to figure out so in the future. But usually it's a contract employee, and that's what the problem would be. If there's a contract would be in writing, we would know we had to review this back in January. I was just curious how it happened because he wasn't a contract employee, so none of us was aware of that until he brought it up. So I can understand why you would do that then, because he just got the job the month before with the increase. So it's kind of, so I'm fine with that if that's what happened.
Very good. Any further comments or questions? No? Mr. County Attorney, do I need a motion to give me the authority, or is this sufficient?
A motion, please.
Okay, would somebody then make the motion per the memo outlined by Greg Hagan, the Port Authority attorney, to give Ben his merit that he's due?
I have one more question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So just to follow up, so all the other airport employees that were under the system that was not collective bargaining also got merit raises during this time period?
That is.
So Ben is not getting anything above and beyond what anybody else would have got?
That is correct.
So I just want to be clear for the record. So all employees other than contract employees, contractual collective bargaining would have received, and they did receive a merit raise.
Correct.
And he did not receive it. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Do we have a motion then for approval of me signing off on this? Motion from Commissioner Sandelli.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Any further discussion on that item then? Do we have anybody who wishes to speak in public comment on the motion that's on the floor? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. And if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And we will now reconvene as the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. And Commissioner Mann, do you have any commissioner items?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had notified all of you that I wanted to talk about mask mandates. I'm not suggesting by having this discussion that I'm not aware of what the rest of y'all's general feelings is, because I've seen you on television, I've read your comments. We are in Lee County, particularly right now, enjoying a slight decrease, but it's been continual for several days now in the number of new cases and everything related to COVID for the moment is looking pretty good. So I'm not thinking there's any sense in my suggesting that we go to any type of a mandate across the board. But the point I want to make here, based on my own observation about the use of masks, I have been in several restaurants recently, and the one I saw in particular that got my attention was one where there was no mask on the servers, on the waitresses in this case. And I observed as the kitchen doors swung open as they were going in and out that the kitchen staff as well was without masks. And in the case of food service, restaurants, food preparation, I would like for us to be thinking about that and have staff review that. If there's any single circumstance where I think mandated masks would be appropriate, it would be in restaurants where food is being served. As we know, our virus is airborne, and where you're serving food for the public at large, this is something I don't think we can treat like every other instance where we're counting on the public to observe social distancing and voluntary masking. I'm profoundly grateful for the businesses such as Publix and Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, and so many of the private sector who have come forward themselves for their own employees' safety and the public safety to ask the public when shopping at their places to use masks. Where it's not happening and it's not required. And I asked one of the waitresses, I said, why no mask here? And she very defensively said, well, it's not required. And I didn't pursue it in any type of an argumentative manner, but she said a whole paragraph there, and that's why I bring it. I'm just asking, do you guys have any thoughts on this? Am I wasting my time talking to you guys because are we just kind of against masks in general? Or is this something that we could ask our staff to see if there's a way we could approach it only for food servicing, restaurants? Does anybody care to comment? I'm just giving you this opportunity to say, Frank, you're nuts, or I haven't seen this, or I don't think it's a problem, or it's something I think we should indeed look into.
Commissioners, any questions or comments?
What restaurant was it? So I know not to go there.
Well, I will not be going back, but I'm frankly going to be doing my own little observations around the community. But the health department's not doing it. There's no state mandate. I think the overwhelming, you look all around Fort Myers, you walk anywhere to a restaurant around here, I haven't seen any in this immediate area where the waitresses and the kitchen staff does not, in fact, wear masks. But I know that I can point to two, Commissioner Pendergrass, and if there's two, there's more, and that just, I'd like to have even suggestions as to how we get through to those folks. I mean, an ugly letter from the county manager or from the public health department, or is there something we can do? Mr. Chairman, you have been very eloquent in your own comments since this whole thing struck us 3 months ago. But the message has not gotten to these people who are directly exposing themselves to the public.
So, Commissioner, I do care about masks. Actually, last month, during the month of July, I think I handed out over 5,000 masks to people in the community and different restaurants and different people in the business. So I do care about it, and after losing a family member to that, and my colleague here being sick with it, totally take it seriously. But I just don't know if we have, maybe the county attorney or manager can respond to, do we have the authority on restaurants as under the State Department of Health, the authority to mandate that on private businesses? So I don't know if we have the authority. Like, I haven't seen a restaurant non-compliance yet, so I've been out a lot and wearing my mask, but I've not seen a restaurant not in compliance. So that's why I was asking where it was, and maybe I'll find out later. But so I don't know if we even have the right to own private businesses like that.
I apologize. I don't know if we have the authority to mandate masks for restaurant workers. I defer to the county attorney for just a moment, see if he knows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Commissioners, if directed, we'd certainly be happy to take a look at it in greater depth. What causes me some concern, though, is in order to have a valid restriction, we would have to establish some factual basis to identify that restaurant workers pose a more significant hazard to the health, safety, and welfare, as opposed to a general mask requirement for all business establishments. In this case, you're actually singling out one type of enterprise, and I think in order to withstand a potential challenge, we would have to have some type of factual basis to support why we would treat those individuals differently than, say, Lowe's or a Home Depot or other type of business establishment.
I do want to add, last week I spent 2 days at a conference in Collier County who just enacted a mask mandate. And during my stay in Collier County, I saw probably 50% of the population wearing masks, 50% not wearing them in businesses. And I asked about it, and the business was like, well, we can't enforce it, so we're not worrying about it. And then I spent 3 days in Orlando after that, which has had a mask mandate, and noticing about 55% of the people there wearing, about 45% not wearing them. Even took pictures of people. It was surprising to me to see people out in Orlando not wearing masks. It was a hot spot. I wore my mask, but it was surprising to see people still weren't compliant. Employees weren't wearing them in different hotels and different venues and stuff. But I think what we are seeing here locally is what our residents and business owners are doing without government intervention. They're actually doing the right thing, and hopefully people will do the right thing, like Dalton Antonucci said 3 weeks ago, that people will do the right thing and we don't have to have government intervention. But I'll find out where that restaurant is later. But I know not to go there. But
Commissioner Sandelli, you're recognized.
Well, my wife and I have been out supporting the local economy whenever we can, and without question, the vast majority have taken the proper protocols. And we feel safe about that, and we're very appreciative of that. I assume there's always going to be a percentage that won't do that. And I think that from a personal perspective, that they put themselves at risk, because I think more people have the same reaction. I may not go into a place unless I'm comfortable that certain protocols are taken. So it can work both ways. But I think the path of education that we have taken at Lee County, I think, is in part certainly responsible for the numbers that are shown here. And I congratulate our citizens, for being attentive, being responsible, and helping us collectively. So it happens one person at a time.
Thanks, Commissioner Sandelli. Commissioner Mann, I want to say I think your concern is valid, especially when you talk about food preparation. A lot of us have probably had even experience working in the restaurant business, and we remembered we had to wear either a hairnet or some sort of hair covering and gloves and other things to take precautions when we were preparing food. And so I think it's definitely something that's a valid observation and a valid concern. I would say that what you observed is probably not the majority, but probably a very small minority of restaurants. I think the majority of restaurants right now are following the guidelines as meticulously as possible because they know that customers are coming in and watching them extremely carefully. And so they don't want those customers who may be offended by them not taking the precautions to leave and not spend their money there. So it's an interesting demonstration of how the market works. People, if they feel uncomfortable with restaurants that are not taking the precautions, they'll stop eating there. And those restaurants will quickly change their behavior out of financial necessity, probably faster than we could even put a new regulation and enforcement in place. And so I think that that's something to think about as we talk about this. One other thing, I was just thinking about the mask mandate in general. As you've probably seen, I've been following numbers like crazy. I'm probably like the majority of Americans out there, kind of addicted to the numbers and seeing how they change daily. And I want to, if we can switch to this chart specifically, I want to show you, so I looked at how do we compare to the 19 counties that have put mask mandates in place. And so I put all of them on the chart. Lee County is the one in orange. What this looks at is this is for the most recent week. This is last week. How many new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 residents did each of these counties have? And as you can see, Lee County is the fourth one up from the bottom. So we had fewer new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 residents than all but 3 of the mask mandate counties. And then I wanted to see, well, you can't just look at 1 week. I wanted to go back for 5 weeks and see how we've compared, and that's this chart. All of the counties that had mask mandates, except for Collier, had their mask mandate in place by the 29th of June. So on this chart, I've put just the counties in Florida that have a population of greater than 500,000. Lee County is the red line, kind of in the middle or closer to the bottom there. I've highlighted it with a bigger red arrow so you can pick it out. But what you can see is over the last 5 weeks, our new cases per 100,000 residents have actually trended the same way, if not better, than some of the mask mandate counties too. So the bottom line with that analysis is I don't think we're missing out on anything by not having a law in place. I think what we're seeing is citizens that are just taking tremendous personal responsibility. It's remarkable the way they've adhered to the precautions in Lee County. I'm very proud of them, and I think we've got the results to show it. So that concludes my thoughts on the issue too, Commissioner Mann.
I'm profoundly grateful for all three of you guys for your comments in public on this. I didn't mean to make this difficult in any way or put anybody on the spot. And my opening comments were to the effect that I know where you guys stand. I've seen your charts, and Lee County, through its own citizens, responsibly responding to the situation we find ourselves in, is to be commended for the way they have behaved. When you get to food service, I don't know how much more you'd have to say. It pretty well speaks for itself. If there's a chance to spread a disease by air, it would be in preparing and serving food. But there are few exceptions. I'm hoping perhaps that just this discussion this morning, like your previous discussions, Mr. Chairman, might help send a message that you folks out there that are in the restaurant business and you still think that you don't need to take into consideration the good health of your employees and your customers, think twice, because you're behind the rest of the world in your thinking right now. And other restaurants, the vast majority of which, and I'm certain you're right on this, are observing the need to use masks. So I appreciate the time that y'all have shared. I appreciate, again, your open comments on this. I will continue to do my own little mask observation and report back from time to time. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. DeGillet.
Commissioners, I mentioned earlier that we've been working on a joint communications program with Lee Health. And I wanted to give just the components of that so you can see that, with our partners, we are continuing to encourage people to follow CDC guidelines, which includes the importance of wearing masks when you can't social distance. And it involves, press releases, public service announcements, joint op-ed piece between includes Dr. Antonucci and Commissioner Hammond, social media posts, billboards, TV spots, radio ads, and direct mailers to people in Lee County, our citizens. So it's as I mentioned, it's a fairly robust program that will continue to develop for as long as we need to do that.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, one last comment, if I may. I want to commend Mr. DeCharlet and the entire staff for the attitude of our administration with regard to masks. We have signs on all of our public buildings that say, please observe the need to use a mask. I think we are good role models, and that would not have happened without your direct involvement in getting the word out. And that, alongside of Target and the rest of them that I mentioned, I think is getting the job done, as your charts clearly indicate. So my hat's off to you guys. Thanks, and keep up your good work. And we'll probably get these couple of restaurants I got in mind to come to the table here with the rest of us pretty soon. Thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner.
One other comment. I think going back to earlier in our discussions, we're going to be making more protective gear available. So when we do see a situation that people aren't complying, we now have another venue to help them get that material to comply, should they choose.
Yep, we'll get that pushed out and in use. Thank you, Commissioner. And at this time,
If I stop out at this restaurant and tell them that I can get them some masks, there are some available, right?
yes, sir, I believe so, Mr. County Manager.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Maybe get me a box and I'll carry them around with me.
Carry them around.
Yeah, give them a chance to say no.
You know, I want to say again, it's really cool to walk into a restaurant and know that they were one of the recipients of our distribution programs, because you can see most of them have put that logo on the floor that say social distancing, and it's by Lee County. And so they've got the Lee County stickers, they've got the Lee County sanitizer, they've got the Lee County masks and gloves. And so it's cool to see the program that everybody on your team has worked so hard on actually in the community and in action.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you take a look at the screen behind you, that's it's a mock-up of the program that in partnership with Lee Health, and that's going to be part of the postcard mailing that we do to all residents. And there's to be a lot of information on there about masks and other services.
All right, well, let's move to Commissioner appointments. Commissioner Sandelli, do you have any appointments today?
I have one new appointment. It's for Catherine Moses for the Coastal Advisory Council.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Sandelli and a second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any discussion on that item? All right. Do we have any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Pendergrass?
Yes, I have several reappointments. Reappointment of Walter Ferguson, Housing Finance Authority. Reappointment of Jennifer Evans, Roadway Landscaping. Debbie Hughes, a reappointment of Roadway Landscaping. Reappointment of Nora Deemers, St. Carlos Park Special Improvement District. Paul Milford, reappointment of Human Services Council. Joshua Hudson, Construction Licensing, and Catherine Bonwell of Historical Preservation.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any objections? Seeing no objections, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir. I have just one reappointment this morning. It's Gregory DeSario from the to the Roadway Landscape Committee. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Mann.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. And Commissioner Mann?
I have one to the Lee County MPO Citizen Advisory Committee, Justin Thibault.
All right. And do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. And you can just pass that one right to the clerk. It'll save me a trip. All right. So that concludes Commissioner items and committee appointments. Let's move to County Manager items. Mr. DeGillet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have three quick items. First one is we have distributed to all of you a letter which we would ask the chairman sign that addressed to Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Rick Scott. And Glenn, would you come to the podium and just discuss the letter for
Thank you, Roger. Commissioners, you'll recall that earlier this summer, the United States House of Representatives introduced the HEROES Act, which would be the next wave of coronavirus relief. The Senate has since introduced its version called the HEALS Act. It does a number of things potentially, including extending the time period in which we can use the CARES Act funds. It also potentially provides flexibility to replace lost revenue. However, one of the caveats to all of that is there is a requirement that we sub-allocate 25% of that $134.5 million fund to downstream governments. Now, I don't think any of that takes into account counties like ours that have made a conscious decision to provide assistance countywide to all of our residents so that cities don't have to duplicate efforts. And of course, if we were retroactively required to sub-allocate 25% of those funds, it would throw the whole program design into question. So the letter simply asks that the Senate advocate for flexibility with these funds, allow us to do the things we're doing, and not impose restraints after the fact, given that we've done everything based on U.S. Treasury guidance to date.
I move the item.
Okay, so we'll motion from Commissioner Pendergrass to allow me to sign the letter as chairman. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have discussion on this item? No? Anybody wish to speak in public comment on this? I'll close public comment. And seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. I'll get it signed then.
And Mr. Chair, just one final item, please. We've been working through this pandemic for about 4.5, 5 months now. And depending on who you listen to, there's a vaccine around the corner. We're just not sure exactly where that corner is just yet. We have been asking ourselves internally, what happens if there's no vaccine by the first of the year? So just want you to know that next week we'll be convening an internal group to begin to answer the questions. What happens if there's not a vaccine by January of 2021? And how is that going to affect Lee County operations and service levels? So if you have any questions about all of that, please feel free to forward them to my office, and we'll include those in the discussion.
Excellent. Any comments or questions for our county manager?
No, my only concern as we approaching hurricane season, you think about all the protocols that we have to follow, things that we have to adjust to meet demand, so on and so forth, and we've got so many restrictions. So the ability to think ahead, whether it's hurricane season or the first of the year, it's in everybody's best interest.
Thank you.
Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. County Manager. Mr. County Attorney.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, the first item I have is a request to extend the declaration of local state of emergency for the COVID response crisis. Commissioners, this will be your 20th extension, and we would respectfully request approval.
Okay, and so that's a motion for approval from Commissioner Mann. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the state of local emergency renewal? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any comment, commissioners? One thing I'd like to, Mr. County Manager, just pose out there with this is you mentioned your working group. As you guys talk about those discussions, could you talk about kind of what the metrics or criteria might be that you would look to end a state of local emergency? I think it was very understandable that we entered into the state of local emergency at the time that we first learned about the pandemic, because we didn't know what we were dealing with at that point. If it does appear that this is a virus that will now be with us for years and years, I don't know that we would want to be in a state of local emergency posture for years. At that point, it would probably not be necessary or called for. I'm trying to think of what the right, because you would think an emergency is something temporary that you need to respond to with specific actions. Whereas if this becomes more of a multi-year event, it might not be an emergency, but something that we just need to always have on our ongoing radar.
Yes, sir. Without having given it much thought, you would immediately start to think about the presidential declaration of emergency for the country, followed by the governor's declaration for the state of Florida, which provides us, you all and my office with some extraordinary authorities. So the question becomes, when are those authorities no longer needed, I think. And it would start with, I think it dominoes from my office back up to you all, to the state, to the federal government. So we'll get that question answered. But I suspect that certainly my office doesn't need extraordinary authorities for much longer, if at all. But we'll be prepared to answer that question for you shortly.
Excellent. Good deal. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One additional item, if I may, just by way of information. Commissioners, during the month of July, we had received a request for input from the United States Attorney's Office regarding motions filed by Ms. Kay Gow and Mr. John Williams. Commissioners, you recall these were the two individuals that were convicted for certain federal crimes related to the VR Labs situation. Both have filed motions for commutation of sentence due to COVID. The U.S. Attorney's Office contacted my office for Lee County's position on those motions. I just want to report to you that our office objected, and we informed the U.S. Attorney's Office that we would take whatever steps were necessary to continue that objection as these motions go forward. I need not have a motion on that. I just want to let you know that that action did take place, and that was the response of our office.
Very good. All right. Any questions on anything the attorney raised? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. County Attorney. And that takes us to public presentation of matters by citizens. I do have a couple cards that were turned in. This is your opportunity to talk on items that were not on the agenda today. You'll have 3 minutes to talk in public comment. And there is a timer. It looks like a stoplight at the top of the podium. It's got a green, yellow, and red light. When the yellow light comes on, it's a good idea to start thinking about wrapping it up, because when the red light comes on, I'll call the next speaker in order to keep it fair to everybody. Our first speaker is going to be Bobby D'Alessandro, followed by Barbara Cavanaugh. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm appearing today to read a statement on behalf of the Women for a Better Lee, a nonpartisan, all-volunteer group of hundreds of Lee County residents united to support the election of a woman to this board. Today I'm here to speak to you actually as a native of Fort Myers for over 50 years, and on behalf of the community that I love, and I know that you love, to implore you to do the right thing and do what 19 counties in the state have already done, and ask you to pass a mask mandate that would direct businesses to require workers and customers to wear masks in public indoor spaces. Women for a Better Lee has not called for masks to be worn outdoors, although some jurisdictions are requiring that. Whether we believe an indoor mask requirement is a reasonable accommodation that would do much to protect those vulnerable in Lee County. The pandemic has continued to spread through our community. There are friends, our family, our colleagues, and our neighbors. Don't we want to do everything in our power to curtail this contagion? Dr. Robert Redfield, director of the CDC, recently said that if we all wore masks, this pandemic would be under control in 4 to 6 weeks. That's the strongest validation mask wearing that has come out from Washington. Unfortunately, not all of our community will wear masks, as we have heard today. They claim that the government cannot force them to do so, but their refusal puts us all at risk. We are in a public health emergency, and their rejection of helping others is not only wrong, it's shameful. This is not some cultural trend that we could ignore or a new style that will go out of fashion. We are seeing people die every day, whether it's 5 or 15, it's still tragic. We understand you're concerned about enforceability. We agree. However, if 19 counties can come up with enforcement schemes, so can Lee County. We are very resourceful, it's obvious. And a recent decision in Leon County upheld the constitutionality of local mask mandates. Smoking is now prohibited in restaurants and movie theaters and most public places. While no smoking bans were adopted, there's no worry about how this would be enforced. Restaurants, bars, and other establishments enforce no shoes, no shirts, no entry. Again, we're in the middle of a public health emergency. We are not doing all we can do for our most vulnerable residents. It's sickening our residents, it's killing the most vulnerable, and ruining our economy. You were elected to lead, and it is the least you can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time this morning. And then Barbara Cavanaugh.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Do you go by Babs?
I am Babs Cav.
Oh, it's nice to meet you.
Right here to try to have a direct conversation with you.
Yeah, nice to meet you in person. All right, go ahead.
I'm going to wind up coming back to you, Mr. Mann. I hope you don't mind that. My name is Barb Cavanaugh. I am a Fort Myers resident, and for everybody's edification, I spent my life inside the Federal Reserve as an executive, a bastion of data everywhere, and in trading rooms which trade and make money based on data. I'm here to take issue with some of the schematics that you've been showing and ask you to please do not take false consolation in that data. You know, I think I can make this a lot briefer if you could go back to that last slide that you put up, the last chart.
Did Sam do that? All right, I think they'll work on that. We don't want to waste your...
That would be great. But the point is, we're taking false comfort in the fact that this is a downward slope and that we are on the lower level relative to other counties. Let me make a really important point. This chart is charting 5 data points. It's week-to-week measurement, 5 data points. A fundamental statistician would tell you that is not meaningful. We need far more data points to make a meaningful decision. Number 2, the starting point of a number of our charts is what we call the levels. At what level are we beginning the X and the Y axis? And at what level are we comparing to other counties? We're choosing June. June, we had a fire statewide in Florida. We still have a fire statewide in Florida. We're comparing ourselves to the fire of June. Have we gone a little bit better or not? In fact, the building is still burning. Is it at the 10th floor? Is it at the 5th floor? It doesn't matter. The building is still burning. So please do not take false comfort in graphics of a few data points. You're concluding that we're concluding that we're moving in tandem with these other mask mandated counties. This part's really important. You need to do one additional very important step called the regression correlation analysis. It says, what's causing that movement? Is it simply the fact that our population is dropping off during the summer months? Or in fact, is it because of a mask mandate? To simply say it's downward sloping isn't drawing a meaningful conclusion. So please do not draw a false complacency. Please do not put the employees in that restaurant in the middle of this argument. Please, if we issue a mandate, we take the employees out of the middle. They're safer, and our healthcare workers, quite honestly, have a lesser burden.
Thank you, Ms. Kavanaugh, for your comments this morning. Very good.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Of course. Would anybody else like to speak in public comment this morning? Mr. Ballard, come on forward. Thank you, sir.
Danny Ballard, North Fort Myers Vice President of the Civic Association. I have two items. Number one, Mr. Salyer told us earlier about having masks to give out to businesses. Maybe with what you said, Commissioner Mann, and I know two restaurants also that don't have their employees wear masks, maybe you all could formulate a list and then have somebody from Glenn's office personally take masks to them and say, here it is. And then you don't have to do it. You have a mechanism in place. Figure out how to do it. Secondly, I think I spoke to Matt yesterday. You have a commission meeting on November the 3rd. That's election day. You're on the canvassing board. You're running for office. You're running for office. If you all are out doing what you're supposed to have, you're not going to have a quorum anyhow. Maybe it's time to think about moving that November 3rd meeting to a different day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Ballard. Anybody else wish to speak in public comment this morning? Okay, well, one more shot. Come on up. And anybody else after him that would like to speak, raise your hand now. Okay, this will be our last speaker for the morning.
Valdemar Garay, good morning, commissioners, good morning, audience, good morning, people who are watching us on TV or internet. We're living a situation when many people has fallen into the depression, they're having crisis, and I understand we lose hope really easy, you know. I just want to extend a word of hope for everybody in the room or somewhere else. We lost our mother many years ago. I was a young guy and I had a little brother, and I had a father who was alcoholic and full of addictions. I'm 59 years old, but listen, back on those years, I was tormented by the spirit of fear, lack of hope, lack of love. I didn't know that the Lord Jesus Christ was there for me. And what does the Heavenly Father did for me when He gave His Son and gave His love on the cross just to save me and rescue for the situation that I was living for. After my mom passed away, we had to pay the mortgage and I had to pay the bills, and I had a little brother that I had to think about it, and my crazy daddy. I love him. I love that. It's my only father alive, you know. He's my biological daddy, and even when he was doing bad to me, evil to me, especially when I told him that when I came out of the closet at the age of 17 years old, he hated me and he was trying to kill me. At the age of 25 years old, I had to leave his household because it wasn't hope in me at all. I just want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there is always hope in Jesus. My situation has changed through the years. I am a born-again Christian. I'm spirit-filled. I've been sober for 28 years after being a heavy alcoholic person, a drug addict, smoke weed, 2 packets of cigarettes a day. So if you're drinking and your problem is with the habits, maybe this is the time to stop doing the wrong habits and replacing those wrong habits for the new ones. So the word of hope that I want to extend for you guys, that don't get depressed, don't look for help, call 211, for the crisis line, call 911, look for pastors, churches, professionals, clinics and hospitals. If you need help, please do it, because there is always a better future for us. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for your time this morning. All right, let's move on to our county manager and the workshop update today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This afternoon at 1:30, we will present to you the second draft of the budget for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, very good. And that information is online under the workshop agenda for today.
Yes, sir.
I assume folks in the audience have had an opportunity to review that if that's a topic they're interested in. Does anybody wish to speak on that workshop information? Okay, seeing none, then we'll close the public comment on the workshop. And I see no further business before us. So, Commissioners, if there's no objection, I'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.